Hello and welcome to the MBOm podcast, where you will learn to master the business of yoga with guests from around the world who have experienced becoming successful yoga teachers, studio owners, and much more. Now, here's your host, Amanda Kingsmith.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the MBOm podcast. I'm Amanda and I'll be your host for this and all episodes of the podcast. This week on the podcast, I am super excited to be joined by Jenny Shih. Jenny Shih is a business coach who has taught more than 25,000 women how to earn a full-time income working 30 hours per week or less as online service-based entrepreneurs. For most of her time in business, Jenny was debilitatingly sick and at some points was only able to work a few hours each week. As the household breadwinner, Jenny found strategic ways to ensure her business remained highly profitable while also giving her the much-needed time to heal. Drawing on both her decade of experience in high-tech and her training with Martha Beck and spiritual teacher Byron Katie, Jenny guides her clients through a no-fluff, step-by-step approach to creating thriving businesses they love without having to work long hours or make huge sacrifices. I am really stoked to have Jenny on the podcast today because we talk about all of this. We talk about how to build online businesses that are successful while working less. My entire intention for 2019 was to work smarter and not harder. I feel like the last couple of years as I grew my business, I hustled my face off answering emails from, crazy hours like 6 a.m. in the morning to Sundays at 9 p.m. And it just felt like in the long term, it's not sustainable. So Jenny and I talk about all of that. We also talk about what it's really like to run an online business, how, people kind of make it seem kind of glamorous and it's not always like that. And she just breaks down some of the nitty gritty of actually being an online entrepreneur. So I hope that you guys get as much value out of this episode as I did. But before we dive into today's episode of the podcast, I want to announce a brand new partnership that I have, and that's with BeYogi. So BeYogi is an online resource dedicated to providing yoga teachers and students with the inspiration and information and insurance that they will need during every step of their yoga journey. BeYoga has drawn from their knowledge of the yoga world to not only create incredible content, but to also provide yoga and wellness professionals with the insurance coverage they will need to expand their careers. And I don't know about you, but I know that I run into a lot of places that won't let me teach or offer any type of programs if I don't have insurance. So this is definitely something that if you don't have insurance, you'll want to check it out. They also have incredible things like online teaching coverage, and you can also get coverage for wherever you are in the world. So if you're somebody who offers retreats or workshops abroad, they've got you covered. And as much as I love the business side of yoga, if I'm being completely candid, insurance is never something that I've been super stoked on. I feel like it's this topic that's kind of confusing. We're never really sure what we need. What policy do we need? Can we trust the company and the people that we're working with? And one of the reasons that I was super excited to partner with BeYogi is I've had so much contact with their team personally. They are an amazing group of people who are really trying to better the yoga industry and make it easier for yoga teachers to get the coverage they need without it being confusing and convoluted. And you can just leave the experience having a little peace of mind, knowing that you're covered should something happen. So if you are a yoga teacher who is needing insurance or maybe isn't happy with their current insurance plan, head on over to beyogi.com/MBOm. So it's beyogi.com/MBOM, and you can get your insurance for $179 for 12 months. And of course, thank you so much to BeYogi for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. And before we dive into this episode of the show, we also have the Schedulicity Hot Tip of the Week with Shayna, and she's talking about Pinterest.
Hey there, yoga business badasses. This is Shayna with the Schedulicity Hot Tip of the Week. You can use your Schedulicity business listing to create a bookable link in Pinterest. Start with a photo that captures the vibe of your yoga practice, and think about adding motivational text or a helpful tip. Set the destination link to your Schedulicity business listing URL. Now when people select your Pinterest post, they'll be led to book a spot in one of your classes or workshops.
So if this sounds like a cool feature, which I definitely think that this is pretty awesome, Schedulicity really does it all. It's a one-stop shop for everything that you need in your yoga business. When it comes to scheduling, head on over to schedulicity.com or send them an email at support@schedulicity.com. They're seriously a kick-ass team, and they will definitely be willing to help if you're kind of like, oh, the technological side of things is just not my thing. And of course, thank you so much to Schedulicity for sponsoring this episode of the show. Now, without further ado, here is Jenny Shih. Jenny, welcome to the podcast today. I'm super excited to have you here with me today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and you run such a cool online business, and it's so wildly successful. You have so many programs, courses, all that good stuff, which I definitely want to dive into and just be a sponge and learn from you. But I thought a good place to start with this conversation would be to kind of talk about your background. Can you tell me a little bit about kind of where you came from before you were running the six-figure online business?
Yeah, so before I had an engineering degree. So I started out as an engineer working at a high-tech company. And I got an engineering degree in college just because my parents said, you go to college to get a job. I was okay at math. Engineers got jobs. Therefore, logic says, go become an engineer. So that's what I did. And I started working at a company. And I never liked engineering school. I never really liked being an engineer, but it was fine. And I realized at some point, it's not going to change. Like, my career is not going to change unless I do something deliberate about making it change. But I didn't know what to change it to. So lots of soul searching, career coaching, books, all of that stuff later. I thought, I know I want to be a career coach for people who are in these corporate jobs because it just made sense, and their heart and their soul are kind of tired and bored and unfulfilled and want to go do something different. That's what I want to do. I want to start a career coaching business. So sole breadwinner in my household. I quit my job cold turkey, which is crazy because I'm not a risk taker at all, with no clients, no website, no nothing. And I was like, this is it. I'm going to replace my six-figure corporate salary with a six-figure coaching business in the next year. It didn't exactly go like that. That wasn't exactly how it all went. But I started working as a career coach and learning how to market online. I was also finding ways to market locally, going to networking events, teaching, brown bag lunches, that kind of stuff. And along the way, to bring in extra money, because now we had no money coming in, I started working as a virtual assistant for other online business owners. I was like, well, I can just learn stuff, so I'll learn stuff and do it for other business owners. And along the way, I started to get these virtual assistant clients really easily. I just started getting referrals, and people were sending their fellow business owners my way. And I realized after that actually I liked that kind of work better than I liked being a career coach. So I thought, oh no, I left my job to start this business that I thought was going to light my heart on fire. It's not lighting my heart on fire. I really kind of like this virtual assistant project management stuff I was doing for my virtual assistant clients. So I regrouped and I closed my career coaching business, and I fired all my clients, and I started again in March of 2011, not quite 2 years after I left my corporate job, at JennyShih.com. And I started out as a career coach, or not a career coach. I started out as a virtual assistant, a coach to make your ideas happen, and a virtual project manager. Really just taking a lot of the corporate skills that I had that I actually really liked versus the nitty-gritty engineering stuff, and some of the soft skills and working with these more creative business owner types, and really helping them with whatever they needed in their business. And as I started to grow JennyShih.com, I realized, I kind of have a knack for systematizing marketing and systematizing this whole business process. And people then started to want to learn that from me. So then we morphed again into, it's still JennyShih.com, but more teaching about business and marketing and the systems behind creating all of that to other business owners.
Wow.
And I've evolved since then, but that's kind of how things got moving.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear. And one thing that I relate to a number of things from that story. First off, your degree choice with college. I have a business degree, and my decision making with that was very much similar to yours. It was like, well, I got to do this college thing, and I really like writing, but I'll never make money doing that. And I don't like blood, so I'm not going to be a doctor. And I don't like arguing, so I'm not going to be a lawyer. So what does that leave me with? How about this generic business degree? Business degree people get jobs, like really, really similar. it's kind of, I mean, it's kind of sad to think about making decisions from that, but I also know that probably for both you and I, it's really led us in the direction that we are now. So those things work out as they're supposed to. But I think it's really interesting how you created like a couple different businesses and how they evolved. Because I think sometimes when we're starting to create businesses, we sort of feel like we need to have the whole idea of like what it is that we're creating. And then we need to like follow through with it, if that makes sense. Like, not saying that you didn't follow through, but that it's like we have to stay with what we're doing because this is the path we're on. Does that make sense?
It makes so much sense. And I so love that you said that, because it's not a really popular, sexy idea. And I'm not one to just teach ideas that are popular and sexy for those reasons. I sort of like to buck the system a little bit. And I think that's exactly right. A lot of times we think, no different from my engineering degree. Like, Jenny, you got an engineering degree from an Ivy League college, so that means that you should be an engineer forever. Like, that's ridiculous. Like, no. And this, I was an engineer until it didn't serve me. And then I started a career coaching business and I learned so much. And I was that until it didn't serve me anymore. And I think it's easy to think that when we start a business, we should exactly know how it's going to turn out. But I'll tell you right now, one thing I am certain of is that I don't know how it's all going to turn out. Like, I'm clear about the next steps in front of me, but that's it. And there's a lot of, it's really scary to realize that you're venturing into something that you don't know where it's headed. And so I think we want to cling to the security of the known, and we just decide that this is the way it's going to be. But that can really constrict us in terms of seeing, oh, actually, this other thing wants to happen. Oh, look, like all these virtual assistant clients are coming to you. That's interesting, or whatever things might want to shift into. So I love that you said that. I'm totally on the same page as you.
Yeah, it definitely is really interesting. And I feel like it's sort of like a little bit of like a wink from the universe, I guess you could say. It's like, okay, so like all these people are coming for this thing that I'm not necessarily offering or that I'm looking to build, but like maybe I should look at doing that, at pursuing that. I'm curious, for people listening, if they're kind of like, oh, okay, maybe I'm in that sort of process of wanting to shift things up a little bit. What was like the kind of nitty gritty background of actually making the decisions to like shut down one thing and start something new?
That's a great question. So when I transitioned from being a career coach to having this other business, it was a transition period. So I, at some point, realized this career coaching thing isn't quite right. So there was that acknowledgement, sort of like when I was in my job. I acknowledged that this wasn't the right job, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I acknowledged that this career coaching thing wasn't fitting quite like I thought it would. And I had these virtual assistant clients and I was curious. So same thing when I was in my job, looking for what's next, as I was as being a career coach, curious about what's next. And knowing that you sort of can't force clarity. It just doesn't work that way. But you can sort of show up in the moment every day and just take in all the cues. It's sort of like, I like to think of it, you could be super woo about it, or you could be super engineer about it, like collecting all these little data points of curiosity. And so I was clear that I wanted to shift out of being a career coach. I had this virtual assistant thing that was building. I was doing these other things around project management for clients. And I got coached. Like, I'm a big fan of getting coached. And I was like, okay, I have this information and something doesn't feel right. And nobody out there is a coach to make your ideas actually happen. So it wasn't like I could pigeonhole myself into this job that other people were already doing. But I needed to do the internal work to figure out what is this that wanted to happen. So as I got more and more clear, I started visioning JennyShih.com and the services I was going to offer. But I also still needed to keep bringing in money. So I was serving my career coaching clients and I was serving my VA clients just as I was before. Sort of like when I was in my job, I was still working my job, even though I was scheming what I was going to do when I left. And at some point, I just had to put all of my energy into JennyShih.com. It just became clear inside, now's the time to go. And I let my other clients go and I went full all into JennyShih.com and put that energy there. And that knowing of when to just pull the trigger and go really comes from some advice a friend of mine gave me when I was back at my corporate job and knowing that I was going to leave, but didn't know when I was going to go. And she said, Jenny, you'll know when it's time. And I was like, but I don't know that I'll know. And I was so stressed out and worried. And she's like, Jenny, you'll know when you know. And one day I knew. And I was like, it's time to write my resignation letter. It's time to tell my boss I'm leaving. And the same thing happened in my business, just waiting for that. And it can be I'm a planner. I like to know where we're going. I like to be in control. And so it can be a little bit frustrating and maddening to be in that place of, okay, there is a shift coming, but I don't know when it's going to come. And all we can do is sort of be present for our own transition and just waiting for those signs or signals or cues, or, everybody gets them in their own way for when to make the next step.
Yeah, no, I really love that. And I think that it's amazing that you just kind of like that you followed that, because I think sometimes it is easy to kind of pigeonhole ourselves and like, oh, I studied this thing, I worked it for 5 years, like I should just do it forever. And it's like, we live a long time as humans. Like, why on earth would we do that?
Right.
So yeah, I think that's pretty amazing. And so can you take me from kind of where we left off with your career path? So you had Jenny Shih, it's kind of reshaped, to kind of where you are now with all the different programs and stuff that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I first launched Jenny Shih, it was a coach to make your ideas happen. Basically, people would come to me and say, whatever, I want to launch my website. I want to create an opt-in offer. I need to put my packages together. And they knew what they needed to take to get there. And you tell me anything. I mean, not literally anything. Like I couldn't tell you how to build an airplane, but for the most part, like, what do you want to achieve? What kind of goal do you want to accomplish? I can just sort of see the steps. It's just how my brain works. I see the steps to getting there. And that was my goal with serving my clients, giving them the steps and holding them accountable to doing those steps to be able to create whatever they wanted. And I was doing that, and I was doing some project management, and I was doing some more virtual assistant work. And as I started to do those things, I was learning about business and marketing and how to grow my own business. And my coaching evolved. It came to bigger packages, and the projects I was managing got bigger. And then I started to get curious about new things. Like I was like, oh, I have this real knack for creating systems. So I created this whole coaching package around helping business owners set up systems. And after my third client, I was like, oh no, I do not want to be doing this, because the people who were hiring me, it was the disaster on their back end. And it was such a disaster that they needed somebody to just come in and do it for them. So I just wasn't the right fit. So part of this, like, things that work and things that don't work, that's how we figure out where we're going to go. We're not always going to get it right. So the systems thing, that was good information, not the right direction. The project management, as the projects got bigger, I didn't like it anymore. I was really good at it, but playing that particular role in somebody's business was not enjoyable. So, okay, that was a good detour, but nope, not that. And along the way, as I was building all of these aspects of my business and learning about marketing and list building and all of those things, people wanted to know, how do you get clients, and how are you marketing yourself, and how are you building your list? All of those things that I was doing to build this part of my business. And I started teaching that. What are the basics of marketing? How do you talk about what you do? How do you put together packages? How do you get clients? How do you blog about? Build your email list. And I started doing more and more of that. And that's really where JennyShih.com has been for quite some time now. Exactly how I do it has evolved. Worked with thousands of clients, and it started with one-on-one and really refining the process of how I help people build an online service-based business. And since then, it's evolved into group programs and products and a whole bunch of other stuff. But it just started with following one step at a time.
Amazing. I love that. And yeah, I think that that's such an important sort of like takeaway, is just continuing one step at a time. I was on a call with somebody just yesterday who was like, I just don't have everything figured out. Like, how do I start? And it's like, just pick something little to work on and just start working on it and just keep going every single day. And it will eventually turn into something. But I think it's cool that you were able to kind of like teach people these things that you were good at, that you were continuing to learn, and that you were continuing to find working well in your business. I think that's incredible.
Yeah. You reminded me of at my yoga class this morning, the teacher said, well, we were doing some like standing back bend pose, staring at the ceiling. I don't remember which one. And she said, just because you can't see the floor doesn't mean it's not there. And instantly what popped into my head was, oh, just because you can't see where you're going doesn't mean you aren't going somewhere. That's sort of how I felt this morning, because I'm in a transition phase in my own business and I don't exactly know some of the pieces of where we're headed. And I just thought how true that is. All you can do is show up right now with the thing right in front of you and do that and take one little tiny step. And eventually all those tiny steps will lead into this path. You don't even know what that path is, but it will lead you somewhere.
Totally.
It starts with just taking that step.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And I think it sounds like you're like a planner. I'm a planner as well. It's like much easier said than done for like, I'm definitely more type A. So it's like, it's a consistent practice of like, okay, I'm just like working towards it. I'm going to figure it out. It's going to happen.
Yeah. So for all of this, like just show up in the now. I am the type A engineer, planner, over control freak. So anybody who's like, I can't do that, I'm a control, like, no. I absolutely. This is a practice, it's very deep practice for those of us who like to know how everything is all going to work out.
Yeah.
But it's an important one.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I feel like it's like a daily practice for me. 'Cause it's so easy for me to like get into like a vortex of like, oh my God, what am I doing with my life? I need to figure all this out. I need to know what I'm going to be doing 20 years from now. And then it's like, just chill.
Right.
Just chill. Figure out what you're going to do today and then tomorrow, and then you'll be good from there.
Right.
So something that I hear from people a lot is that, they want to take their business online. And I think, I work completely remotely. You work entirely remotely. And so it's definitely possible. Like I know tons and tons of people who do it. I'm sure you do as well. But the thing I hear the most is like, how do I start taking my business online? So my question for you is, what are some key things about actually getting started to building an online business?
Awesome. So the first thing I would say is get clear on what it is that you want to do online and get clear about how that's going to be monetized. And the reason I say that, and I'm not saying you have to have it all figured out because we just talked about how you can't know how it's all going to pan out, but you do need to know where you're going to start. Because a lot of times people will say, I think I was listening to a podcast the other day that referenced a recent study that asked 7-year-olds what they wanted to be when they grew up or something. And, when we were kids, it was like, I wanted to be an astronaut and, an NBA player and a lawyer or a doctor. Well, now on this list of potential careers that kids are choosing, they're saying, I want to be a YouTuber or a social media influencer. And,
wacky.
That's like, yeah, right. It's like also saying like, also, and you want to play in the NBA and you want to be an astronaut. Like the percentage of people who actually get to do that is really, 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 really minuscule. So the reason why it's important to ask yourself how you plan to monetize your online business is a lot of times I see people put effort into, I'm going to, build up this 100,000 Instagram following. Great. That does nothing for you. I'm going to post every day on YouTube. Great. That does nothing for you. Like those things, they're like this great, hypey, easy to talk about on social media as awesome ways to make money online. But there's not really a solid strategy. So the way most people are going to make money online is by selling virtual services, online courses, physical products, digital products. And all of those things are way easier said than done. None of them is better or worse than another. I personally am a fan, big fan of helping people start service-based businesses because you can make money faster. It is less work. There's a lot of information. There's a lot of the steps that you have to take, especially for people who have offline businesses. They have all this knowledge from their offline services, their in-person yoga classes that they teach. They have a lot of data from their clients and who they serve that they can take into the online world. It's a little bit harder to do with products. And anyway, so the first thing is, how are you going to monetize it? What are you going to offer? And then get clear on the strategy that's going to be required to make that happen. So for example, I teach people to build online service-based businesses. So where they offer their services one-on-one to somebody else virtually around the world. Yoga teachers fall into that category as one example, but it's health coaches, bookkeepers, web designers, copywriters, anybody who can provide a service virtually. And the first thing to do is like, okay, what value do you have to offer somebody else? So is that really well-written copy? Is that certain style of copywriting? Is that a certain style of yoga? Is that a certain healing or a self-care practice or whatever it is? Get clear on the value that you have to offer someone. And that's where you sort of have to begin. And from that becomes, creating a website and finding the value which you offer and putting that messaging across your website and then reaching out to potential clients. Now, all of those steps, there's like 100 steps under each one. So you tell me what questions your audience is asking about any of those things that I just said.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think a good place to start is kind of like maybe figuring out what exactly your offering is going to be and then how to price it. Like, I think that's something that people really struggle with in the yoga industry. And if I'm being completely candid, it was something that even starting my own business, I remember sitting down with my boyfriend and being like, I need to figure out like, what am I actually selling here? Like, is all my stuff just for free? Because I'm never going to be successful with this if I'm not if I don't have a paid product or service. Like, if I'm not using my audience to actually get revenue, then essentially like, and there's nothing wrong with creating like a virtual community, but it's like, at some point that's going to get quite old for me because I'm going to still have to put my attention and energy into something else that actually brings in money to like feed me, house me, all the things we need in like 2019. So I think figuring out like what your offerings are and then how to price them.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks for giving me that jumping off point. So here's the first thing I want to say to anybody, especially yoga teachers or anybody who has these offline businesses they want to take online. The cool thing is you can throw all of the in-person rules about pricing and packages out the window when you go online. I think that's one of the coolest things that you can do is that you just can do it completely differently. I see this a lot with clients of mine who are therapists. They're like, well, we bill insurance by the hour and the sessions are this way and blah, blah, blah. It's like, great, but you want to get away from the insurance model. You want to get away from that. So let's do it. Let's throw all of that out the window and start different. So the first thing for folks to do is get rid of any preconceived ideas they have about how things are done in that industry in person and know that you can do it completely differently online. Even if you still work with clients in person and you have these clients you work with online, you can treat them differently. You can show up and serve them in different ways because the context is different and they're going to want to be served differently. We think about a yoga class in person in one way as a consumer, and as a consumer, we're going to think about yoga private lesson online in a different way. Okay, so once sort of folks give themselves permission to split those two apart, then their minds are available, your minds are ready to hear sort of what I've seen work consistently over and over again. It's what I teach my clients to do across every single industry in the online world. And it is starting with what I call a bite-sized offer. Many people have heard the term minimum viable product in terms of getting traction in the physical goods realm. Bite-sized offer is sort of like the minimum viable product for services. If you don't know what minimum viable product is, it's totally fine. You're not going to miss anything. You're not going to miss out on anything.
People
but if you
like,
do know,
oh God,
don't worry. If you don't need us to know, it's fine. So basically what you're going to do is ask yourself, what small result can I offer the people I'm most excited to work with? And that's where I always have people start. Who are you most excited to work with? Building an online business, building any kind of business is hard work. Like there's a lot of people who say, it's just so great, you can do it and drink Mai Tais. Yeah. And then you're working hard on the other, like you're working hard also. There's a level of hard work required to do this. So we want to make sure that you really, really enjoy and are excited about working with these clients. So pick the clients you're most excited to work with, not the ones you think who have the most money, not the ones that are in the industry you think you've trained in, not the ones, whatever. Just throw all of those shoulds out the window and pick the clients you're most excited to work with. So let's say you're a yoga teacher and you want to work with prenatal moms who have some like high blood pressure. I'm just sort of making that up. Like you're just like love the idea of working with pregnant women in private yoga because there's so many places in the country that don't have really pregnant women specific yoga classes. And those are your people and you totally love it because you know that it helps them feel healthier, it helps their baby feel healthier, it makes labor easier, whatever all the reasons are. So you've got this picture of this person in your mind that you just would love to work with. And you ask yourself, all right, if we were to have, say, a 60-minute private yoga session, what is one thing that at the end of that session I could help that mom achieve or accomplish or feel or do? One small thing. It's going to be small. I don't know what it might be, just realizing that she has this technique of breathing that will help her feel more calm throughout her day if she's kind of stressed out. I'm just making that up because I don't know what it would be. But you kind of hone in on this one tiny little result. And the thing is, you have to pick something tiny. So I'll use the example of a weight loss coach. So somebody's just getting started, helping people lose weight. Your small bite-sized offer, you are not going to help them lose 80 pounds. You're going to help them identify their number one emotional eating trigger and an alternative behavior so they can stop doing that. That's it. Like really, really tiny, but it puts them on the path to their ultimate goal, but it's just one small step. So you're going to create a package, a 90-minute session, a 60-minute session, whatever you think it should be with this client that helps them achieve this result. And then you're going to check in with them, 2 weeks later, between 4 days and 2 weeks later, depending on your service, and a 15-minute session. Like, how'd that go? How are you feeling? What kind of questions can I answer? Maybe a half an hour to really make sure that they solidify that learning, that they had that one learning they're supposed to do. And you price it at, I always suggest $99. Now you might think like $99, oh my gosh, people pay like $27 to go to a high-end yoga class in like LA. I can't charge, $99 or, people start to freak out for whatever reason, or $99, I can't make enough money with 99. There's all sorts of, I've heard them all. I've heard all the objections, but just the reason you start with $99 is this is pretty much a no-brainer. If you're going to tell this pregnant woman that you're going to give her one really clear, breathing practice that's going to help lower her stress and lower her blood pressure so that she can have a healthier pregnancy and whatever that result is you promise. And if she's really anxious about this situation and you are promising that you can solve it, $99 is nothing. It's like a no-brainer is kind of what we call it. We call this a no-brainer offer. So you're going to create this package. You're going to serve these clients. You're going to serve like 3 to 10 clients with this one offer. And at some point you're going to go, oh, I know. If I just, and then I don't know what's going to come next because it's different for everyone. If I just, taught this one thing this different way, or change this to 2 60-minute sessions, or also gave her this free this meditation download that she can listen to, then it would help her get even better results. She would even feel more relaxed. She would even feel more closer to this end result that she wants. And that's what I call serve and learn. So you served your clients and you learned from that experience. As a result, you then adjust your offer. So now your bite-sized offer is a little bit bigger and it costs a little bit more, and you serve 3 to 10 more clients and you have another aha moment, and then you change your package and you increase your pricing. You again served and you learned from it and you adjust and you went away. You continued further on. And this is really the whole point of this is to get people over their fear of having to, create this big long package and make these really big promises and all that kind of stuff. Because the worst thing that's going to happen is somebody, and I've never seen this happen ever from all the clients I've ever worked with. I've never heard this happen, but this is the worst thing that could happen is somebody asked for their money back. And all they did was pay you $99. Like, it's okay, here's your $99 back. But it helps folks get traction and get experience. And then you learn from your clients, what kind of words should I use on my website? How did you find me? Where else can I connect with people like you? So that was a lot, but that's really where it all begins. How does that sound, Amanda?
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing all of that. There's like a million good little golden nuggets packed in there. So I really love that. It's like making my brains already thinking about like my own online business. And then if people are kind of getting kind of like how we started this conversation, like if they get to a point where they're like, okay, maybe this isn't the niche I want to serve, or now I want to serve another niche, they can kind of just keep reapplying that sort of like cycle as they go.
Exactly. So sometimes clients will create a bite-sized offer for their target clients and they'll serve 3 to 5 clients and be like, oh, I don't like this. Like, I thought I was really going to like serving pregnant women who were stressed out and needed to lower their blood pressure, but their stress totally stresses me out. I actually would prefer to work with them, whatever. I have no idea. Women who want to get pregnant, or not women at all. I have no idea. But every single moment you're serving, you're learning. And sometimes you're serving and learning and heading in the direction of refining. And sometimes you're serving and learning and realizing you want to head in a different direction. Sort of like before I was saying, yeah, I worked with these clients on systems and, I tweaked my process and I worked with another one and I still didn't like it. And then I just realized that's just not what I want to be doing. And that is what we're doing here. Serving and learning. Sometimes the learning is keeping us moving in this direction. And sometimes the learning is, we need to pivot and head in a slightly different direction. And it's all good. It's all great information. And you're getting paid as you learn about who you're here to serve.
Yeah, no, I love that. Something that I really recommend to yoga teachers, especially new yoga teachers, is like say yes to find your no. So obviously there might be some like hard no's that you know of going into being a yoga teacher. But I think that it's like really important to say yes to like as many opportunities as you can so that you can kind of either put them in like the yes or the no pile in terms of your career. And it's even like as somebody who's new into their career, like an 18-year-old, I feel like you should just say yes to job opportunities. Like it was reminding me of that as you were talking, like just saying yes to clients and then being like, oh, no, not doing that one again. Like you just kind of put it in the no pile. And I feel like that's how you discover the things that you're really excited and passionate about, because they're not always what you think that they're going to be. Hey yogis, I just wanted to take a quick little break to talk about studio growth. Has your yoga studio's growth become stagnant? If you're like many studio owners I talk to, you've tried every marketing tactic under the sun. You started a blog, you're posting regularly on all the social media sites, running challenges, sending out newsletters, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, you're doing a ton of work and barely paying the bills. What if there was an easier way? A way to get new students regularly coming through the door without having to do so much work to get them there. A proven system that will consistently bring in 20 plus new paying students to your studio each and every month. Well, there is. Ron Medlin and his team at GetYogaStudents.com have developed a 3-step system that will help you quickly grow your yoga studio to a 6-figure profits and beyond without being shackled to your business. So if you're ready to grow fast and you'd like the blueprint to help you get started, visit GetYogaStudents.com today to get the exact system Ron and his team uses to help his yoga studio clients add 10, 20, or even 30 new students every single month. On top of that, you get a free 45-minute consultation session. So if you're kind of like, I'm not really too sure about all this, I don't want to fork out a bunch of money without even knowing if this is going to work, head on over to GetYogaStudents.com, book a free consultation, and just talk with Ron. He's got so much knowledge, and him and his team are willing to work with you with your studio's needs. And once again, it's GetYogaStudents.com to start getting more students in your yoga studio. All right, back to the episode. As people are like building their online businesses, and at least this has been sort of my experience, and I'm curious your thoughts on it, I feel like it's like we create this freedom in our lives where we're not tied down to a physical location or a certain place, but then we end up working a lot. Can you kind of talk about how we can sort of start working smarter instead of harder? So working less time. I'm curious from a personal standpoint, just because I found, I put so much focus in like build, get clients. Yeah, I'll work any hour you want me to as long as you'll pay me, to being like, okay, I need some boundaries, and how to actually do that without decreasing your income.
Oh, I have so much. We could spend an entire hour talking about this subject because I'm pretty passionate about it, but I'll keep it to a couple tangible nuggets. So the first thing is really just determining what your schedule looks like to you, or what you want it to be. So for me, one of my biggest motivators for leaving my corporate job was the ability to not work when I didn't need to. So I had to have FaceTime in the office. People needed to see that I was there. And as I started moving into management and managing teams, my team needed to know I was there. So I find funny times a day to sneak out and do my own stuff, because I was very productive. I would just get a lot done. I didn't need to work 60 hours, but I kind of needed to be in the office. One of my top things that I was excited about working for myself was that I didn't have to play that game anymore. I could just work or not work when I didn't want to. But you're right, it can bleed over. So I was pretty clear that I wanted to work about 20 to 30 hours a week. And that's kind of my norm. The main thing for me is, this is more of my main problem, is my work kind of bleeds. So I'm very flexible. I'll do most of my team is East Coast. So I wake up in the morning to a bunch of questions and stuff. And then, so I kind of start my day that way. And then I go to yoga and do all this stuff. And then there's stuff that comes up, and then there's stuff at night. So I don't work a ton of hours, but they kind of bleed out into the rest of my life. And I'm kind of working on reining that in. But the main thing, cutting hours down, regardless of the actual hours that you do work, the main thing is knowing the reason behind every single thing that you're doing. A lot of times people will say, I'm working on being on social media and posting on Facebook 10 times a day. Great. Why are you doing that? What is your end goal? How does that help you achieve the actual results you want? I'm publishing a podcast 7 days a week and really doing everything I can to create great content. Great. Why? How does that fit into the strategy of what you're looking to create? A lot of times we just end up doing all this busy work. And so the biggest way to rein your hours in is make sure that every single thing you're doing, how it relates to the end goal of your business, which is most likely to make money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. I feel like there's so many little things that we feel like we should be doing. I just feel like there's so much out there, and it's if you want to have a successful online business, you need to have a presence on all these social media platforms. And you need to have a Facebook community, and you need to have one-on-one clients, and you need to be in your community, and you need to be doing this. And I feel like it's just talking about it makes your head feel like it's going to implode a little bit, because there's just so much stuff. But I love the idea of kind of being really intentional about what you're choosing. Okay, I'm choosing to be on X social media platform and nurture this community. How is this serving me, and how can I do it in a way where it occupies my time in a meaningful way?
Yes. Yeah. And sometimes those things are they don't have necessarily a straight line to revenue or end results, but you sort of you can tell the trajectory of where they're headed. And so as long as we're intentional and deliberate about it and know why, so for example, I sent an email to my list on Tuesday this week, and I directed them to the content that it was on Facebook because I really wanted their input on something. And I ended up with 150 comments, which is not typical of my Facebook posts, not even close. And I went through and I took the time. It took me 3 days and several hours to respond to every single person's comment. And many of those times it required questions and follow up and all that kind of stuff. And on the surface, it looks like that's like 3, 4, 5 hours of time that you just sucked out of things that could directly create revenue, because this post had nothing to do with revenue. But what I know is that right now, at the beginning of the year, I launched my list. I launched really hard and I sold really hard to my list. And in order to keep them engaged and feel loved on, even if they aren't purchasers of my program, I need to connect with them personally. So I know that by me spending that time to re-engage and connect with people on a real one-to-one human level, it's resetting the trajectory of where we're headed and creating that connection with the community. So it's like sometimes these things they make real linear sense. Like when I'm on doing this webinar, it correlates to, X many sales for a program. And other times it's not quite so linear, but you can see how it fits into the overall strategy. And as long as you see, and you can really connect those dots versus just like, I don't know, I just post a video on YouTube every day because I read somewhere on Facebook that's what you should do. That doesn't really fit into the whole strategy, but that's in the right track. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think too, it's probably like you, with that example, like you were being very intentional about the use of your time, which therefore makes it purposeful. So instead of just sitting there being like, man, how many comments are there to go through here? It's like, okay, like I understand why I'm doing this and what the purpose is and how it's beneficial for both my audience and myself personally.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah, no,
I love that intentional. Yes, exactly. Like I'm being very intentional. I want to connect with them very deeply right now. And this is going to take a lot of time, and it's totally worth that time because that connection is priceless.
Yeah, definitely. I'm curious with your goal of working 25 to 30 hours. I feel like that's kind of like my ideal, especially with traveling. I feel like that would create a really good balance. And I know you mentioned you have a team on the East Coast. As you were growing your business, was it kind of like always looking at like, okay, there's more sort of work coming in. I've got more to do. This means I need to hire out to continue keeping these boundaries that are important to me. Was that kind of how that happened? Or how did you sort of like scale your business while not kind of breaking this like 30-hour work week rule that you set for yourself?
Yeah, that's great. So what I knew leaving my corporate job was that I probably could have squeezed my corporate job into about 32 hours a week, which is, kind of blasphemous. I was a engineering manager when I left, and, folks were pulling 50-hour weeks and bringing their laptops home on the weekends. And I was like, man, no, not me. And so I knew that when I started my business, that's like, I could probably get my work done in about 30 hours. But one of the other things that I learned is that when I'm extremely deliberate and intentional about the work that I'm doing, my brain doesn't have more than 30 hours of work per week in it. If I'm really doing the important things, if I'm focused and intentional and like really going all in every moment, I can't do much more than 30 hours. It sort of taps out. And I remember reading, I don't want to quote it, and I'm not at home right now and I don't have the book in front of me, but Cal Newport in his book, Deep Work, refers to something along these lines. It's not exactly, these aren't his exact numbers, but he basically referenced that like we only have the brain capacity to do some really hard work in a few hours per day, which really kind of adds up to, a few hours per day of super hard work plus all the things we have to do. And then you kind of max out at 30. Now, I'm sure you could train your brain. I think he talks about training your brain to do it more. But what I realized was that if I'm doing the work that's most important, it really is only 30 hours. So the reason I say this is because to answer your question, as I started to need to do more things, did I hire more people? It didn't kind of go in that direction. It was more like I've always been limited to 30 hours a week. For the years I was really chronically ill and couldn't even work 20. That was just, the work fits into the hours I was willing to let it. I just sort of tap out and just say, well, this is all I can do. But the hiring my team has more come out of growth of the business as a whole. Like this business is ready to grow more. And I only work 30 hours a week, so I'm going to have on people. So it's kind of what you said, but not exactly the same. Does that distinction make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's also interesting to hear that as well. I feel like just setting those boundaries is so powerful. And I mean, obviously dealing with illness, you really like your body is forcing you to set those boundaries. Like it's basically saying like, you cannot do more than this.
Right, exactly.
Which like from a kind of like yoga teacher standpoint or like a health standpoint, I feel like that's why the body does get sick. It's telling us to slow down in this crazy busy world, and it's just our job to actually listen. But yeah, I really admire that as somebody who's like I have worked really hard over the last couple of years to grow my business. And I'm at the point now where I'm like, okay, now I need to like hone in on my boundaries and my hours. And I need to be really clear about, you know, what works for me and what doesn't, without this fear of getting fired or a client letting me go, like being okay with, you know, if it doesn't work for them, then it's probably not a good fit for me either, which is a hard thing to do when you've spent so much of your time just trying to build that stuff up.
Yes.
So something else I'd like to chat about, which I find is really interesting as somebody who works online, is this idea that working online is really glamorous. And, you know, we were talking before we started recording, you know, we are both not in our current homes right now. We're both in places that are warmer than where we're actually from, which is such a blessing that we're able to do this. Like this was just not something that was available to, you know, our parents, for example. It's something that my parents still struggle with. Like they seem to have no comprehension of why or how I'm able to make money when I'm, you know, in Mexico or in Asia or whatever. They're just like... just super confused by it. But I've also found that people are like, man, your life is so amazing. I'm like, it's really not that glamorous. So I'm curious if you can talk a little bit about some of, I guess, the realities of running an online business or being an online entrepreneur.
Yeah. So I just sort of was chuckling when you're like, people think being online is glamorous. I'm like the opposite of glamour. I mean, like, it's like I don't even have like a glamour gene in me whatsoever. Not even like a hair on my head is glamorous. So I'm just sort of chuckling because it's not me. And, you know, but you're so right. You know, there's a lot of perks to having an online business, a location independent business that that our parents didn't have, that we didn't have. Like, I don't know how old you are. I'm 40. So by the time I graduated from high school, like email was like barely coming around and couldn't even have done it then. This is just a very new thing. And it's super cool that we can go wherever and live wherever and do whatever that we couldn't do, you know, 15 years ago or 20 years ago, quite the same, which is super awesome. But at the end of the day, you still have to work. So like, you know, we're down in Southern California right now. We come down here for January and February to escape the Oregon rain. It has been the rainiest, coldest weather they've ever had in Southern California in more than 20 years. But today it's sunny and it's gorgeous, but I got work to do. And so there's this level of like, oh, it's so cool, you know, down in Southern California, I get to be in the sun and all that kind of stuff. And still there's work to do. And so yes, there's all these perks and I so appreciate them and I'm so grateful for them. And I think they're some of the best things about working for yourself. And there's still work to do, you know? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally. I think even like it was kind of like a reality check for me when I first like set out as being like a quote unquote digital nomad. I'm like, oh, this is really not like what traveling was like as a backpacker. It's like totally different because now I have responsibilities and I have to do work. I can't just go out and explore.
Yes. Yeah, it's not just fun all the time. So people will be like, oh, you're going to be down in California, like you're going to do this or that, or I love how you guys down there, it's like 2-month vacation. Like, that's not a 2-month vacation. I work the hardest in January and February, and we work to get internet set up, and you know, it's just everyday life, just somewhere else. It's everyday life and work with some flexibility that you don't have in a traditional way. So if to folks that is how they define glamour, absolutely. But I think for the most part, it's just life with extra awesome flexibility, maybe.
Yeah, definitely. And it's like, I don't like to like hate on the life because it's like something I've worked really intentionally for. Yeah. But it's like, I also like to bring around sort of just like the reality of like sure, there's probably people out there who run like some sort of like have some sort of passive income, like there can be elements of passive income, but I really don't believe in this idea of like, oh, we set up something one time and then we never touch it again and we make enough money to survive off of it. Like, it's just not the reality of how running an online business is. at least in my
Correct.
experience.
100% completely. I get so frustrated when people say, yeah, I want to quit my job and create some passive income so I can travel, 10 months out of the year. I was like, yeah. And I don't say this, but good luck with that. Good luck with that. Even the people who teach how to create passive income, they're working all the time. Did you know that? Like, it's constant optimization. So I just like to reframe this whole online business thing is you get to create a really, really awesome job with all the flexibility and the perks you want. And you can work whenever you want or don't, and get to own the repercussions of how much you do or don't work.
Yes. I love that reframe of it. I think that that's a really, really good way to kind of like just give an image of it that is very, very real. Like that's my experience of it, and obviously yours as well. So I really like that. Yes. Thanks for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of a big question, but one of the things I always like to do kind of as I'm getting to the end of these conversations is talk about, business lessons that have been learned through their career. And usually I'm talking with, yoga teachers or studio owners who are like, oh yeah, I've learned a couple of business lessons, but your entire business is like business lessons essentially. So what are some of like the top sort of online business lessons or business lessons that you've learned about running an online business over the last, couple of years as you've been doing this?
I would say that the lesson, I don't know if I learned this. So I will have been self-employed running this business. As of 10 years, as of tomorrow, I think.
Amazing.
10 years as of tomorrow. I started my coach training 10 years as of tomorrow. Anyway, so over the course, and I don't know, 10 years is a long time. So I don't know at what point this really sunk in, but it did happen fairly early on. And that is like, there's no such thing as a failure. And I'm always really careful when I say this because it can be touted as like this, people pretending to be extra spiritually enlightened, there's no such thing as failure. And I don't mean it that way. I mean it kind of in a very pragmatic sense. Everything we do in our business, no matter what the outcome, is an opportunity to learn things we didn't know before. So I think back, I have a couple blog posts on failure, my personal failures. And you could call my career coaching business a failure because it didn't last very long. The first product I created and sold with a friend of mine, we put in hundreds of hours. We sold one copy at $67 that after the credit card processing fees, we had to split. And like, you could call that a failure. But every single one of these things, the amount of learning that came from each of those, the amount of insight, the amount of clarity, the amount of so much information about myself and about the market and about marketing and about technology and all those things, there's so much to be learned. So there's like, if I had to just boil it down to one, it would be there are no failures. Like, you may not achieve the result that you want. And this actually happens more often than not. I think we generally don't achieve the results we want more often than we actually achieve the results we want. And if we don't get attached to that result outcome, we can work towards it. But if we don't get attached, like our future happiness and success doesn't rely on achieving this particular goal, the world unfolds in front of us. All this magic happens on the other side of things not working out. I look back on my last 10 years and I think about all the things that didn't work out and how each one of those was a pivotal moment of growth and learning and opportunity and unfolding of something else. Like, something else happened that I could not have predicted in a good way on the other side of stuff not working. So a lot of times I see people hesitant to put themselves out there online or to create an offer or to try something new because they're afraid it won't work out. And the biggest thing I can say is, right, it may not, but it doesn't matter, because on the other side of that thing not working out, then you have so much more information than you have before. Now, if it does work out, awesome, celebrate, that's great. But if it doesn't work out, you've learned just as much, if not more. And when we really are willing to own that, like when we are willing to own that we may not get the results that we want, we're going to take more risks. We're going to learn more. We're going to grow more. Our business is going to grow more. And we're going to end up in a better place than we could have ever imagined otherwise.
Yeah, I really, really, really love that business lesson. And I feel like that's been a really influential thing in my life. Like, I think just letting go of this idea that something quote unquote not working out was like something on me, I guess, like, or about me. Like kind of getting the ego involved a little bit, where it's like, oh, like I suck because this didn't work, and reframing it to like, okay, so this didn't work. Let's look at like what I learned from it. And we like learn so much from those things. Like the product that doesn't sell, we learn way more from than the product that does sell.
Yes, it's so true. Sort of like, I'm not using these yoga analogies, but I love yoga and practicing yoga for a long time. And lately I've just been like loving when teachers just throw like a little bomb and it catches me by surprise in class, because that isn't like the main reason I go. I don't go for the spiritual lessons, but you kind of walk away with them. And somebody said the other day, like, you grow more from the pose, like the balance pose you fall out of, than the one that you stay in. And I was like, oh, that's a good one. Like, so then I translate all of these to business. So that's what came to mind when you were saying that. I love it.
Yeah, I love that. Great. I love that from like the yoga studio perspective. And then also, from the business perspective, it works so seamlessly. But yeah, that's like definitely what I've found. And it's a practice of kind of like dropping out your like I think ego is like probably the best word that's coming to mind, but just your attachment to it, like as if it means anything on your self-worth. Because I think it's so easy to just get stuck in like, oh, well, maybe I should just give up on this. Like I suck. But it's like, no, just look at it and see like what you can learn from it and then create something new.
Oh, we could talk for an hour on that one too. I will hold back. So good.
Yeah, definitely. Do you have any other big business lessons that you want to share with listeners today?
I will say that the lesson I'm learning right now, or the one I'm practicing right now, however you want to put it, is sort of just an offshoot of what we talked about. So there really is no failure. And the next phase of that for me, so that one I've got down pat. It doesn't mean it doesn't hurt when I don't hit my goals, but I really got that one down. The next one is like, this business agenda is no longer my agenda. So I'm really thinking about how the business I am building is not one that my ego, that my limited Jenny self wants to create, but I'm asking myself how I can be aligned with what wants to be created. And the interesting thing is, when I drop my agenda going forward, so we were talking about failure, which is about going backwards. And now it's like the same idea about going forward. When I think about the future, if I drop my own agenda and I more get curious about what wants to happen next, who needs to be served, how they need to be served, I'm opening to this right now, and I'm finding lots of magic starts to show up. And as I do that, I look back to previous times in my business where I sort of dropped the agenda for anything that I was doing, whatever it was, and like magic followed. So right now, that's where I'm at. That's the lesson I'm learning, is getting curious about dropping my own agenda and being open to just what wants to happen next, because evidence from the past shows me magic usually follows, and I look forward to figuring out what that might be.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really powerful one. And I think especially kind of like as a more like type A organized planner, like as you were talking, I was like, but how do you even do that? It's like my brain really doesn't comprehend how to do that.
With a fair amount of struggle on the inside, and then letting go of the struggle. But the planner in me has a hard time with it.
Totally. I think though I'm just thinking about it from like even a podcast interviewer standpoint, or like a coach standpoint. It's like, when you go into something with an expectation of what you want out of it, I feel like it's maybe like not as organic as it could be if you go in just being like, what could come out of this, I guess. Yeah. Does that kind of relate to what you're saying?
Yeah. Last night I was listening to Don Miller, who runs the host of the Story Brand podcast, and he was talking with somebody about interviewing, and I forget who it was, but they talked about exactly that. Like when you go, like it's good to go into an interview knowing what you want to do, but the best interviews are always the ones that sort of go in organically, where you unfold, like just open to whatever might want to happen. So I totally get what you're saying.
Okay, cool. I was like, hopefully I'm on the right track with this. Yeah, it makes me think of like when I first started MBOm, I had pretty much like named the podcast episodes before I'd go into the interview. And so it was like I was interviewing people, and this was just my first couple of episodes, but I'd be interviewing people with the intention of what I wanted to get out of it. And I found it was actually interesting. I interviewed a studio owner I've worked for 4 years, and I interviewed him for a second time on the podcast. And I had this kind of like idea of what the podcast episode was going to be going to be about. And every question I asked him, he took it in a direction that I wasn't looking to go in. For me, it was like this, but it was a really, really, really beautiful episode. Like it was amazing. And it was at that moment that I switched my entire philosophy about interviewing from, okay, I'm going in with a certain outcome in mind to like, hey, I'm a curious person. And if I go in to this with the idea that I'm just going to be authentically curious, something great is going to happen, and it's going to be great. So that's what that makes me think of.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. I think it's great.
Yeah, no, I love that. I'm curious, do you have any, so obviously I want to send people to all of your products, services, offerings, and we can talk about that in just a sec, but I'm curious if you have any kind of like top resources that have really helped you throughout your business as you've been growing online, or just any sort of books that have been really impactful for you, or anything that we can kind of point listeners towards who want to embark on this journey.
I would say there's a ton of resources out there, but the couple things that would really help folks a lot is, one is you can't do enough mindset work. And I don't have a specific person to point you to. I've got a bunch of folks that I've used and have really resonated with me in the past, but I find that different approaches to mindset work better for different people based on their brain and how they think. So one thing for sure is make sure you have a consistent practice or methodology or approach or a coach or a something to get out of your own way. Because as business owners, we are the number one thing that holds us back. Our thinking, our fears, our own self-imposed limitations, you name it. We are the number one things that hold us back. So mindset, managing your mindset is a must. And if you have something that works for you, one of the first things I used was the work of Byron Katie. If that doesn't work for you, there's so many countless resources about reevaluating your thinking or getting out of your own way. So I can't emphasize that everybody find something that works for them in that arena. And then the second one, and this has helped me a little bit further along in my journey. So folks who are brand new to online business, you'll get some value here, and I would definitely encourage you to check her out. But for those of you who are farther along and really want to up your game, I cannot recommend enough Kendrick Shope. Now, full straight up confession, she has become my best friend. It didn't start that way. She was one of my clients, and I was helping her build her life coaching business. And at some point, I was asking a group we were in about, I feel like I'm not converting enough clients for my consults. Like I'm talking to these perfect prospects, but they're not saying yes. She said to me, well, I used to be in pharmaceutical sales. Maybe I can help. You get on a phone call. 90 minutes later, I was like a changed woman. And within 2 months or something, I had a 6-month waiting list and made an extra 10K. And it was just crazy. And I said to her, what are you doing trying to become a life coach? You need to teach sales skills to people. And so Kendrick Shope, she runs a free online community, and she does a ridiculous amount of free training and coaching for her community, totally for free. She's kind of crazy like that. I love her to pieces. And the awesome thing about her approach to selling is that her number 2 sales principle or something like that is, if it feels icky, don't do it. Or she says, if you feel the ick, find a better way. So she never, ever, ever pushes people to do something that feels gross or sleazy or slimy. She says there's always a way to sell better and for you to feel good doing it. And that has been, I've been working with her since 2012. And that has always been the case. She still helps me today with my sales stuff. She's amazing. So I can't recommend her enough.
Awesome. I love that. So thank you for those. And I'll make sure that there's links for that in the show notes. And then if people want to go check you out, where can they find all of your stuff?
The best place to find me is at jennyshih.com. And we are just in the process of creating, and it should be ready by the time this episode goes live, a totally free little mini guide on creating a bite-sized offer. So for those of you who are intrigued by the idea of creating an online offer bite-sized, we've got a totally free resource for you. It's at jennyshih.com/BSO for bite-sized offer. So for folks who are looking for other resources, maybe the bite-sized offer thing isn't yours, I've been blogging and teaching about business for a long time, and you'll just find endless resources at jennyshih.com. Tons of free guides and trainings and downloads and blog posts galore about list building, finding your target client, creating offers, showing up on social media, facing your fears, all of it. Just head over to jennyshih.com, and there's just a wealth of information there for you.
Amazing. Thank you so much for this conversation today, and for taking the time to chat with me, and for just sharing your wealth of knowledge with myself and my listeners. This has been amazing.
Oh, you're so welcome. It's such a pleasure. And I hope everything that we talked about moves folks forward in some way or another in their business, because it's really kind of cool to be able to do this whole online thing. Even if it's not glamorous, it's still pretty awesome.
Yeah, 100% on board with that. Thank you, Jenny. All right. I hope that you enjoyed that episode of the podcast with Jenny Shih and that you are leaving feeling super inspired and motivated to work smarter, not harder in your business. I actually first encountered Jenny on a webinar that she hosted, and I just found everything that she talked about to be so relatable and also so inspiring. So definitely check out her offerings, see if she's offering any type of webinars or online courses or anything like that, because it's definitely worth it for sure. Of course, you can find show notes and all that good stuff at MBOmyoga.com. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Mastering the Business of Yoga. You can find the private Facebook community at Yoga Business Badasses. Just search it in the search bar in Facebook and answer the questions, and I'll let you on in. And just a quick reminder that Megan and I still have a few spots left in our Costa Rica Yoga Teachers Yoga Retreat that's coming up in the fall of 2019. So it's November 2nd to 9th in Nusara, Costa Rica at Bodhi Tree Yoga Resort. It's going to be a really, really magical week, and I hope that you're able to come. So if you want to learn a little bit more about it, you can head on over to bit.ly.com/yoga teacher retreat CR or mbomyoga.com/retreats. And of course, send me an email if you have any questions or comments or anything about it. It's info@mbomyoga.com. All right, that's all for now. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next week. Namaste.